Hey folks, let's discuss today the Scorpio-Pluto matrix, the spiritual strengths of the Scorpio-Pluto matrix in astrology. Of course, Scorpio representing a series of psychological needs and motives and urges, and Pluto, the planet, acting to sort of fulfill or execute the needs of the sign Scorpio with which it is associated. So we have that matrix there, Scorpio being the psychological drives and Pluto being the acting agent. Pluto will empower to satisfy the Scorpio need for power and potency. Pluto will deepen to satisfy the Scorpio need for depth. Pluto will eliminate to satisfy the Scorpio need for elimination. So we're going to be looking at what are some of the spiritual strengths that Scorpio sort of innately understands and is sort of built into the Scorpio way of doing things. So one of the key strengths of the Scorpio-Pluto matrix is control. Scorpio understands the need to control. And when it's too much control, it means that this strength, the strength that understands the need for control, is gone into an extreme, right? But Scorpio sort of innately understands the management and control of one's emotions as a pathway to emotional and, let's say, soul security. So Scorpio is seeking the stability and the rootedness that comes from a management of one's emotional body. So Scorpio really sees this as a spiritual discipline. Scorpio-Pluto is really seeking people a peace that comes through the management of one's emotions. And that is the pathway, as I've said, to getting that sense of emotional and soul security. So too much control and the spiritual discipline of the management of one's emotions are essentially two endpoints along one continuum. Yes. So on the one hand, we can have just too much control. Scorpio has taken its strength and gone into the extreme. But on the other hand, we have control as a means of spiritual mastery, mastering the emotional body. So Scorpio is an emotional fortress. It may not want to break down or to disintegrate if it feels like it's liable to experiencing emotions and feelings that are simply just too overpowering or too powerful. But sometimes Scorpio just has to learn how to feel, and that is very healthy for the Scorpio to just understand and know that it has to experience certain emotions and not control its emotional expression. So Scorpio innately understands that the path to spiritual attainment is mastery, as I've said, of the emotional body. And Scorpio really is the urge to find peace and stability and security from that mastery of the emotions. So central to and fundamental to the human experience is just the spectrum of emotions that a human being can experience, and where a human being stands in relation to those emotions that he or she can experience is such a crucial index of the level of spiritual attainment that a person has achieved. The level of spiritual mastery is very much bound up with how we are standing in relationship to the emotional body. And that's something that Scorpio innately appreciates. And because Scorpio innately understands the relevance of the emotional body, Scorpio wants to heal the emotions. It wants to transform the emotions, transmute them, eliminate what doesn't need to be there, what's toxic, and it wants to purify. So embedded into the strength of Scorpio is a crucial understanding of that relevancy. Why is the emotional body important, and what can it do for me? What is this key that we've been given? What's this special part of the human anatomy, and what can I do with it? And how does it present a pathway for me to be much more of an integrated and whole human being? That's what Scorpio gets. So Scorpio, of course, is fixed energy, which means that it wants stability and peace and security through anchoring, through emotional anchoring. Now, Taurus, its opposite, wants that anchoring, wants that security from the continual provision of material resources. So for Taurus, inner security is very much tied up with material security. It wants that stability and peace on the material front. But Scorpio wants to get to a place where there can be chaos on the outside, chaos materially, but it really wants to be able to draw upon its inner emotional resources to find that stability and security and peace that it's craving. And that's Scorpio's strength. Scorpio will tend to see or evaluate its worth in relation to the extent to which it can go on the inside to find the emotional peace that it is seeking. So it wants to not be so invested in what's happening on the outside. It wants to go back to those inner resources, that inner mastery. When all hell is breaking loose on the outside, Scorpio wants to be sure that it can go on the inside and find security there. By the way, when I say Scorpio, I'm not talking about a person. I'm talking about an archetypal energy that now becomes, let's say, filtered or flows through a human being. So there's the archetypal energy, and then there's what happens when that energy kind of melds or merges with a human psyche. Another key strength of Scorpio is thoroughness. Many people say for Scorpios themselves, those who have a lot of Scorpio energy in their chart or personal planet, sun, moon, aspects in Pluto, many people don't get how thorough Scorpio energy actually is. So Scorpio has turned over every rock of an issue so that it gets it thoroughly, it wants to understand it thoroughly. Scorpio will reach page 13 of a Google search because it wants to make sure that it has investigated every single thing, every single aspect. Because Scorpio is craving depth, yes? Depth of understanding. And depth is what makes Scorpio feel more secure. And thoroughness is the upshot of a need for depth. So Scorpio will be annoyed when you try to present it with information that you think it doesn't know. So Scorpio will have an internal dialogue that says, I already knew this, and will be annoyed that you cannot see how thorough and in-depth Scorpio actually is. So related to Scorpio's need for emotional security, but somewhat different, is Scorpio's capacity to draw upon its inner reserves for strength. So the integrated side of that is doing just that, but the unintegrated side of that tendency is not letting people in. So it's kind of like two ends of a continuum, as we've said before. The one side is, I'm not going to let anybody in, but the strength to that is just saying, look, I can rely on myself. I can rely on my own inner reserves. So in one sense, apart from Scorpio's general need for privacy, Scorpio does not let people in because it does not see the need to. Scorpio is already managing its own emotions. It's already tending to its own inner reserves and resources. So it doesn't occur to Scorpio that it can ask other people or ask for support. So sometimes Scorpio will actually not know when it needs emotional support or input because it is second nature to Scorpio to draw upon the inner resources and reserves that it already has. But sometimes Scorpio has to know when the input of others actually adds to its own reserves. So Scorpio's internal reserves can actually be buttressed by the emotional input of others, and Scorpio has to learn that lesson. So Scorpio being able to draw upon its own reserves is the same thing that allows people to actually rely on Scorpio, to rely on Scorpio's emotional resilience and Scorpio's emotional resources. When others are falling apart, Scorpio is not. So just to be clear, there are octaves of sign energy on one level of vibrational frequency or resonance. There is the vindictiveness, the ruthlessness, jealousy, and the destructive nature of the Scorpio-Pluto matrix. That's one level of vibrational resonance. But the resilience and the thoroughness and the drawing upon the internal reserves, the emotional mastery, that's another octave. So that is why we have to talk to somebody or get some kind of input from them to ascertain the level of consciousness from which they are meeting their chart. What is the quality of their consciousness? what is the level of their awareness. So we don't know just by looking at their chart alone without any input what this is. Another key Scorpio-Pluto strength is seeking wholeness and integration. Now, it's not the wholeness and the merging that Pisces is seeking. Scorpio-Pluto is really wanting to integrate the personality. It wants to transmute and purify the emotional body. So when it finds integration through working with the shadow, it heals and it finds inner power. And the healing and the inner power brings us to the next two key strengths that Scorpio has. So because Scorpio is seeking wholeness and integration of the personality, it is the archetypal healer. It can show other people the pathway to healing because on a very intuitive, unconscious, subconscious, core fundamental level, Scorpio appreciates and deeply understands the process of seeking wholeness and seeking integration. Seeking wholeness and integration then leads to the other core strength of Scorpio, that's power. Power and true power for Scorpio is something that comes from an integration of the personality. Internal integration is the basis of Scorpionic power. And when the personality becomes increasingly more whole and increasingly more integrated, this wholeness and this integration really becomes part of the bedrock of Scorpio's emotional reserves and emotional resources. Scorpio is, in one sense, the search for inner reserves worth relying on, and that is the source of Scorpio's power. And true power for Scorpio will always be something that is internal, because what Scorpio is really seeking is wholeness. Wholeness on an inner level. So some folks with plenty of Scorpio energy in their field will try to shortcut the process by seeking power externally through control and repression of other people. And Scorpio-Pluto is obsessive and relentless and doesn't know when to stop, because on an inner level, on a deep inner level, what it's really seeking is inner power. So unintegrated Scorpio energy will try to find inner power through external means, and it becomes obsessive because it is on this eternal quest. But it keeps on seeking power through external means, but external means can only partially, or let's say temporarily, satisfy Scorpio's need for inner power. So Scorpio, through seeking power externally, is trying to fill an inner void, and that's why Scorpio can be so obsessive, because it must continue to try to find something that it's really seeking, and it thinks that external power will give it. So when Scorpio is going on the outside, is trying to fill a void that only internal resources and inner power can truly fill. So Scorpio doesn't want anything to be able to shake its inner foundations. And if this is actually in balance, then this is one of the highly evolved traits of the Scorpio energy. Only an appreciation of the deepest laws of life give Scorpio true satisfaction, because Scorpio can build its emotional castle on that. Nothing else will do. An appreciation of the deepest laws of life allows Scorpio's foundations to not be shaken, because it is rooted in laws which are abiding and which are true. Scorpio wants emotional and soul security. Nothing else will do. So Scorpio knows where true value is to be found. Apart from Scorpio's need to die to what is old, apart from Scorpio's need to regenerate itself, Scorpio's deep interest in death and the afterlife and the journey of the soul and what happens when we leave or depart the physical body, these things for Scorpio is a way of pursuing the emotional security that Scorpio is seeking. So an appreciation of the metaphysical aspects of our existence is not an exploration for its own sake for Scorpio. It's not an intellectual exploration or to satisfy intellectual curiosity. It is done for the purpose of achieving inner security. Scorpio says, I want to understand the journey of the soul and life after death, because I want to reinforce that I'm okay. I want to reinforce that I am secure. So the deepest laws of life, the continuation of consciousness after we die, those things give Scorpio the ultimate kind of security. So generally speaking, archetypally speaking, Scorpio's strength is investing in emotional resources that are truly abiding and not frivolous. So do you have a lot of Scorpio-Pluto energy in your wiring? If so, definitely leave me a comment below and add your 2 cents. What are, in your estimation, your own spiritual strengths? Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, talk soon. Bye.